Welcome back, everybody. Today we're talking about the Stormcast Eternals reveals from the Nova open stream that they were doing today. There's not a ton of information, but they did show some brand new models or sculpts or versions of other models that you might have seen in the past. So we're going to go through kind of some of the details that we can see in the video. I'll put footage over top of that, and I'll also mention what was said in the interviews. Now, the interviews were pre-recorded little puff pieces that weren't necessarily scripted. Well, at least the questions were scripted. The answers had some insight into them, but it's not going to be like a big deep dive into what's coming. I feel like maybe there could be some hints about not just what's in the rules right now, but maybe they were hinting at the battletome that's to come soon for Stormcast Eternals. So we'll talk about all of that, but first let's just kind of go through all of the models that we have here. So the first thing were the Stormstrike Palors, which are a 3 model cavalry unit. Now, they said they are riding for vengeance. They're better on the counter attack, a counter punch, if you will. They're heavy cavalry. That's why there's 3. They're on Griff Chargers, and they're in the classic Stormcast colors and theme. So they're not going to be Ruination Chamber. They're going to be a different chamber. Now, I should also have a disclaimer that I'm not a Stormcast expert, which means if I get something wrong, I apologize, and you can feel free to correct me in the comments. But either way, Cavalry is hot right now, so this looks to be right on time for the Stormcast, and looks to be like a little bit beefier than the Palors they have now, I guess. Okay, great. So we also have the Lord Relictor returning with a new sculpt, again, as far as I can tell. Looking a lot more morbid, spookier for sure. This is the spiritual guardians of the Stormcast, and it's a core reliable priest unit is what they said. They actually said it's one of the strongest core infantry priest heroes across any faction in the entire game. Now, are they referring to the upcoming battletome perhaps? It is a great model. It looks spookier than the old one. And a tanky priest with a +1 to chant is definitely powerful, but I'm just kind of curious, like they said, it's like the most powerful or one of the most powerful priests. I'm curious if that means that, something's coming on the horizon in the battletome. We also have the Lord Terminus, sorry. These are the people that lead the Ruination Chamber, that after somebody, a Stormcast has been reforged too many times, if they've lost their humanity and they can't tell between, good guys and bad guys, or maybe the example that was in the recent White Dwarf was that there were some Stormcast that slaughtered not just the chaos, that they had to fight, but it was a Tzeentch cult or something that had hostages. They killed the hostages too. They couldn't tell. They couldn't tell the difference. They couldn't figure it out. So those people at that point need to be put down, to put it, I guess, not so politely, but their time is done. It's time to stop getting reincarnated, to be reforged. And so in that case, the Lord Terminus takes his axe and chops off their head, or whatever it is he does. But he has to keep all of the information, or he or she has to keep all the information about those Stormcasts and all the battles they fought in, etc. Okay, so this kit seems cool. It has a choice of a great sword or a great axe, and a very cool Memorian is following along carrying a giant hourglass. We also have a new Lord Celestant kit. I'm not super familiar with Stormcast, so if this one is not new, it looks like the model that we already have, but it has some slight differences to it. The cape is a little bit different, etc. But either way, core hero infantry guy, very cool combat phase ability, great. Okay, we also have a Stormreach portal, which is a faction terrain, and there's a lot of details to paint here. To be honest, it kind of looks out of place with the setting, but I bet people will make it fit the setting when they paint it compared to this studio done one, especially if it's being deployed in the lands and Thema against the Skaven. If it should look a little bit spookier in my opinion, or at least in darker lighting. But this is built by the Stormcast and the Memorians. They said it can hold. So basically, they described a scenario in combat when you're playing where you can hold people back, and they're going to lock down your home objectives. And when it's time to push, you have some people up ahead. You can send these people through the portal and then deep strike your opponent get deep into the backfield, and late in the game just kind of win it at that point. Okay, and so then we have Irin the Witness, who was the first Stormcast to take another Stormcast's life. He couldn't bear to see his brothers in arms suffer, and also, like I mentioned, when their job was compromised, they needed to do something about it. So he's riding a Morgriff. He is part of the Ruination Chamber. You can also build him as a Lord Vigilant, and they mention here that the Lord Vigilant is a good fighter with speed, but that Irin is going to be a priest. So specifically, if you build him and then take him probably for more points, then you're going to get more of a support role for your army, but still no slouch in combat, they mentioned. He's sporting a very cool axe with a bunch of hourglasses on it, which is very spooky. And then finally, we have Toris the Redeemed, who's a very popular character, and I remember learning all about him on the Garage Hammer podcast. I love those guys. And so basically, he's from the Realmgate Wars, redeemed from Chaos. He was a Nurgle guy. He was a farmer that held out against Nurgle for a very long time, and then got converted by Nurgle, and then he got kind of redeemed by Galmaraz the Hammer, I guess. And then now he's a Stormcast. Looks really cool. So he is part of the Ruination Chamber. He takes the Light of Sigmar, which is he's holding up there, to guide the lost and kind of keep them in check. He's kind of like the Memorians that way. And you can also build a standard knight, a Zeros, with that box that he comes in, and they mentioned that the standard Knight Azeros, or just Knight Azeros, will have synergy with the Prosecutors. They didn't talk about Toris's abilities, but he looks awesome, and it's very cool that he's in the Ruination Chamber for any specific synergies that might bring. And it also makes sense that he's in that chamber, considering that he's from the Realmgate Wars, which is so early on in Age of Sigmar's history, that at this point he must have been reforged countless times, and is approaching that dark end as well that all Stormcast eventually get to. So that's kind of it from the stream. They mentioned that the first battletome is going to be Stormcast, and then also like Skaven. Those are going to be the first ones. And they mentioned some other stuff, which I'll put in the roadmap video, although little spoiler hint, not really much of a roadmap, but we'll get to that in another one. I wanted to keep the two topics separate. So thanks for stopping by. Let me know if I missed anything. Otherwise, it was very cool to see these previews. Would have been cool to see a little bit more, but if you're a Stormcast player, and I can think of one in particular that I'm hoping comments, I would love to hear your opinions. All right, we'll see you in the next video.